everyone. Welcome to this webinar. We are very pleased with a big amount of interest for this webinar. We had over 200 people that registered for this webinar. So I see that there are now 110 participants already. So I guess that the number will grow the next minutes. So very pleased with this. It's great to have so many people here today. And I think that that has a lot to do, of course, with the topic that we are discussing here today, which is the impact of coronavirus, the impact of COVID-19 on people on the move, refugees and other migrants at the borders of the European Union. So we'll be talking here today mainly on the situation in Italy and in Greece. But before we start, I would like to give you some more practical information. So I will ask everyone to put your microphones on mute and also to keep your cameras off. Then a second information is that this webinar, it will be recorded, so keep that in mind. But that is also for us to have this recording and to share it also afterwards. I think that will be useful. And then a following point is that it's possible to ask your questions to our 4 panelists here today. We will ask you to ask your questions in the chat box on your right side, and my colleague Cecile, she will collect these questions, and if we have too much questions for the time in the end, she will have to make a selection so we can ask some of these questions to our panelists. Please, if you have a question, also indicate to who of the panelists you want to ask your question. Then maybe a last practical information. So this webinar is organized by ELF, 1111, and our French-speaking colleagues of CNCD 1111, CNCD 1111, which is the coalition of the Belgian NGOs, you can say. And we organized this together with our political working group on migration, Justice Migratoire, and we had special support for this as well from the platform Minors in Exile. We try to have in each of the webinars we organize to have special attention to child rights. So that brings me to the panel for today. We have asked all of our 4 panelists to speak for 15 minutes and also to end their presentation with 2 or 3 policy recommendations for the European Union or European Union member states. The presentations, they will be in English, except for one presentation of Vicky Skoumbi that will be in French. So I hope that will not pose too big of a problem for most of you. And so with that, that's the practical information. With that, we can start, and we will go immediately to Italy, to Sara Prestianni. Sara is speaking to us from Bologna. She's an expert in migration policies, and she's working for Euromed rights. Sara has over 15 years of experience in the field of migration. She has done research in the Mediterranean region, but also in the Sahel. She has published several reports on migration and the policies of the European Union when it comes to migration. And she also does an interesting report where she collects or she does research in migration camps and along migration routes from Calais to Idomeni to Rome, even to Agadez and Libya. So very interesting. And so Sara, she will talk to us on the latest developments in Italy and the central Mediterranean region, Italy, Malta, and search and rescue. So I will pass the floor to Sara for 15 minutes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much to Sense that organized such interesting webinar. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, perfect. I will start my presentation with the Italy case, and I will move forward the Maltese one. Everyone listen about the fact that Italy closed its port because Italy, with the decree, just informed the fact and declared itself an unsafe port for migrants intercepted by ships flying foreign flags. That is mean not the fact that Italy closed the port at all, because there are a lot of migrants arriving in Italy. Even yesterday, there was an arrival with 100 persons. That is mean that Italy decided to put in place a discriminatory procedure. So there is a procedure for migrants landed autonomous in Italy, and there is another procedure for migrant intercept and rescue by NGO making search and rescue at sea. So again, we see a background of criminalization of solidarity that we very well know in Italy. So the procedure for people landed by themselves or intercepted by the Italian Coast Guard is that are transferred in the Italian territory in hotspot for a quarantine period. We have to see, just to understand the number, from the beginning of the year, arriving in Italy 3,400 persons. In this moment, so for people landed by themselves in Sicily or Lampedusa that are now in hotspot, we see there are 116 people in the Lampedusa hotspot, 50 persons in the Pozzallo hotspot, and other 57 persons in the Messina hotspot. And for migrant rescue at sea by Sara NGO, specifically is the case for 146 migrant rescued by Alan Kurdi boats, and for more other 35 migrant rescued by Aita Mari boats. In this case, Italy create a quarantine boats that is placed in front of Palermo city, but not in, yes, in Italian water, but not in the land at sea. And for them, there is a lot of question that is really not very clear. All of them, so around 200 persons in these quarantine boats, the name is Rubattino, are tested for COVID-19 and are all tested negative, but still we don't know how long they will stay in these boats and which will be the next step for them. There are someone speaking on possible relocation to Germany, but anything is really clear. So it's very important to underline the fact that there is really in place a discriminatory procedure and two different procedures for migrants landed by themselves or intercepted by the Italian Coast Guard, and for migrants rescued by search and rescue NGO. Actually, there are any search and rescue NGO at sea, because the two have bring back migrants in these Rubattino boats. Many organizations, all together with the Tavolo Asilo, that it's a coalition on asylum in Italy, have denounced this decision, pointing out that with an administrative instrument, so a ministerial decree, they in some ways suspended the international law. That is mean that Italy can be considered a safe place. Of course, this different procedure have been decided and justified by the COVID crisis, and that is just not make sense. Why for migrant people landed by themselves there is a procedure, and for migrant rescued by search and rescue NGO there is another procedure. So that is more or less the situation. We see also we have quite empty detention center, and the person after the hotspot normally are transferred to a reception center all around the country. For what concerns Malta, we see also that the number of arrivals from the beginning of the year is 1,135 persons. But please, to understand the border management by the Maltese government, it's very important to try to reconstruct what happened during the Easter week, where we see 12 persons left to die in the middle of the sea and illegally pushed back to Libya, where it's important to underline in this context, speaking on Central Med, that Libya is in completely war situation. Again, migrants there, when are pushed back, are detained in detention camps where usually they suffer torture. Yes, we know very well also that Libya as other countries are affected by the COVID crisis. So coming back to Malta, in the night between the 9th and the 10th of April, 63 migrants left Garabuli, that it's more or less 15 kilometers south of Tripoli, during the night. When the arrival in international water, they start to call several organizations, especially Alarmophone, with distress and saying that there was really in danger. Other boats was in the same time at sea. This call actually was ignored for 5 days in a passing the book mode. In the same area, there was a Frontex agency, but only with aerial surveillance. So there was able to look from the sky at the boats, but not proceed to any rescue. The 11th of April, Malta sent NAVTEX message to all ships in the area and denied them a port of safety. So again, we see how Malta in some way announced to close their port to migrants' boats. On Tuesday, 14th of April, after 4 days, that it's important to remind of desperate call of distress, Italy started to patrol the area, even if it was actually under the responsibility of Malta for search and rescue. But without saying nothing, in the same hour Malta, without informing anyone, coordinating the rescue, if we can call it like this, or let's say the interception, with a ghost boat. Why I speak about the ghost boat? Because it's motor fishing with the previous Maltese owner, with now a Libyan flag. This ghost intervene and bring all the migrants on board, and these ghost boats reappear in Tripoli in late morning of 15th of April with 51 survivors on board and 5 body deaths. According to survivor, 7 other persons dead in the sea that was in this boat tried to reach European land, so they put themselves in the water. According to some declaration, it seems that it's quite normal that Malta use to coordinate the interception at sea and, of course, the illegal pushback to Libya with private vessel. In this case, is a very strange ghost boats. These new ghost boats we have seen again yesterday reappear in another interception and finalized with a pushback to Tripoli. So I think that it's very important to underline how, and actually for this, the Maltese Prime Minister is accused for delayed rescue mission, but especially we have to underline that if Malta have intervened, these 12 persons will have never died at sea. So there is a directly consequences and responsibility by Maltese authority. In the same day, Malta sent a letter to Mr. Borrell, specifically asked to boost the empowerment of the Libyan Coast Guard with the budget support. We all know that Libyan Coast Guard are very connected with militia. We all know that when intervene, Libyan Coast Guard push back people in detention camps in Libya. So it's very important also to underline how dangerous can be this kind of request. But also, Malta asked to declare Libya as safe port for disembarkation of migrants. That it's another very, very dangerous request. It's important to underline how also in the same moment there was other action in the field. For example, yesterday started the Irini operation, that it's an embargo arms operation in front of Libyan water, but again in the council decision for the Irini operation was mentioned the collaboration with the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. So more and more in this very complicated context with the war in Libya and COVID crisis, again, call for a cooperation, a very dangerous cooperation with the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. It's very important to underline a positive point. So a few days later of this letter sent to Mr. Borrell, 3 organizations, GLAN, ASGI, and ARCHI, supported by 30 international network and organizations, among them Euromed Rights, Human Rights Watch, International Federation of Human Rights, and Amnesty International, challenging a complaint to the European Court of Auditor, a big project funded by the EU Trust Fund for Africa, so EU budget coming from the Development Fund and used for training Libyan Coast Guard and for creating the emergency, so the central coordination in Libya, and again, to be able to push back person illegally in Libya. We have to remind that from the beginning of 2017, 40,000 people have been illegally pushed back to Tripoli coast. So the positive is this complaint to the Court of Auditors, because they underline the lack of transparency on how EU budget have been used for supporting the Libyan Coast Guard from one hand, and to the other hand, it's very important also to challenge the more general accountability on the EU support to the Libyan Coast Guard. It's important also to underline a very good decision, a very good press release coming from the European Parliament, from the Libya Committee, that on Monday discussed on the Central Med and underlined the very dangerous relation with the Libyan Coast Guard. So it's very important also to have the support of the Libya Committee on this fight. So I'm coming to the conclusion for not take more time to other panelists and speakers, but I think that face of this warring scenario, we really see a systematic violation of international maritime law. So we see migrants left to die, and some countries declare in discriminatory way their port closed. And that it's not acceptable even during this COVID crisis, because there is place where migrants can be landed, hosting and being quarantined. So no need of boats in the middle of the water for the quarantine, and no need to left to die migrant, and no need to push back them illegally. But also important to underline the violation of Geneva Convention with the systematic refoulement that I've mentioned to Libya, and the violation of the European Convention on Human Rights. So face of this systematic violation of human rights, we call for related to member states, and especially in Italy and Malta, to respect the rescue obligation and to stop any practice that violated the international convention. And to, of course, stop any collaboration with the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. We cannot accept that at sea there are no really search and rescue operations, because the reason for why migrants escaped from Libya and from their home country are still there. So it's needed an urgent intervention. And to European Union to remind that is no anymore possible to violate European principle collaborating with the so-called Libyan Coast Guard. It's very important to support the first country in reception and for search and rescue. Finally, it's important to underline that the unique solution is to launch an European rescue mission and to promote solidarity-based reception mechanism at EU level. What we see now is the application of a very strange agreement, that it's the Malta Agreement, where based case by case, it's decided in which country person can be relocated, no idea on the timing on which migrant will be relocated, no idea on the country where migrant will be relocated, and really no idea in a clear system. So we hope that in the future, the fact that there is no European solidarity by other member states does not oblige anymore Italy and Malta to left to die migrant, but in general to left to die women, men and children at sea, as happened in the last day.
Okay, thank you so much, Sara, for your presentation from Bologna, Italy. So I take from this some very important policy recommendations as well. I spoke on the need for urgently stopping this cooperation with the Libyan Coast Guard, to stop funding this Libyan Coast Guard, because it's this Coast Guard that brings people back to torture, to human rights violations, etc. So I think this is a very important one, a very concrete policy recommendation there. And the need for a rescue mission, an EU-led rescue mission on the Mediterranean, not only observing, but also rescuing people at sea. And then, of course, there needs to be a solidarity mechanism to share responsibilities within Europe when it comes to protection and access to asylum. So thank you so much for that. In the meantime, there have been a lot of people that have entered this webinar, so welcome to you as well. Maybe some practical points that I pointed out before, so please keep your microphones muted and the cameras switched off if possible. And then we can now go to our second speaker in this panel. So we will now focus on another humanitarian crisis situation at the borders of the European Union, which is of course the situation in Greece and the situation on the Greek islands, which has been a crisis already for the last years, but a crisis that has now got a lot worse, even with the COVID crisis. And so for that, we have invited Ms. Vicky Skoumbi, who will speak to us from Athens. Vicky Skoumbi is born in Athens as well, working for alηthεια. I hope I pronounced that right, which is a Greek journal. She's editor-in-chief there. She's also director of a research program for the Collège International de Philosophie de Paris, so the International College for Philosophy in Paris. And also Vicky has published a lot of work on the issue of migration, and with a special focus on the situation in Greece. She's also active in the Micro-Europe network. And Vicky will speak to us in French. So Vicky, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce que vous m'entendez? C'est bon? Oui. Bon, tout d'abord, je vous remercie beaucoup pour l'organisation de ces séminaires et de votre invitation. Je m'excuse pour les anglophones de parler en français, mais je m'exprime beaucoup mieux en français qu'en anglais. En anglais, j'aurais rédigé. Donc, je dois vous dire tout de suite que j'ai du mal, mais un mal fou, à trouver les mots suffisamment justes et les mots suffisamment forts pour décrire la situation actuelle dans les hotspots dans les îles grecques. Les hotspots, je précise, ce sont les centres des premières réceptions et d'identification des nouveaux arrivants sur le territoire. Donc, déjà, bien avant l'épidémie de COVID-19, la situation dans les hotspots comme les camps de Moria à Lesbos ou comme les camps de Vathi à Samos était décrite comme l'enfer sur terre et il y avait un tel surpeuplement, il y avait des conditions si indignes, si dégradantes pour la dignité humaine et il y avait un tel manque des structures sanitaires qui était dénoncé et tout cela a été... Vous m'entendez? Oui? C'est bon? Oui. Et tout cela a été dénoncé à plusieurs reprises, tant par les hauts commissariats aux réfugiés, par des organisations comme Amnesty International, comme Médecins sans frontières, et même Médecins sans frontières avait prévenu à plusieurs reprises, bien avant la pandémie de COVID-19, que les situations actuelles à Moria, à Lesbos, et à Vathi, à Samos, c'est une situation propice à la déclaration et à la propagation très rapide des épidémies. Excusez-moi, il y a un bruit de microphone. C'est moi qui fais ça? Est-ce que quelqu'un...
Pas de problème, continuez.
Je peux continuer? Merci,
Oui.
merci. Donc, avec la menace de COVID-19, nous avons 39 000 personnes, des demandeurs d'asile et des réfugiés qui sont entassés dans des infrastructures dans les îles grecques qui sont prévues, dans les meilleurs des cas, pour 6 000 personnes, pas plus que 6 000 personnes, dans la meilleure des cas, 6 000 personnes. Et la situation, bien entendu, est devenue explosive, d'autant plus que la seule réponse apportée par le gouvernement grec face à la pandémie et au risque beaucoup plus important de propagation de la pandémie dans une situation de surpeuplement dans les camps a été une restriction drastique des déplacements des réfugiés hors les camps, une interdiction de toute visite dans les camps et un bannissement des ONG, des membres des ONG des camps. Mais il faut savoir aussi que le personnel administratif est de nombre très limité. Il n'y a pas plus que 45 à Moria. Donc, ce sont les ONG qui font tourner Moria dans tout ce qui est nécessaire pour le quotidien du camp. Donc, les mots d'ordre du gouvernement étaient « stay in camps », rester dans les camps, et c'était censé être l'équivalent, le strict équivalent de « stay home » pour nous autres citoyens européens, et de rester à la maison, sauf qu'à la place de ce qui a été pour nous un confinement sécurisé et protecteur, nous avons dans les camps de hotspots un enfermement dans des conditions d'insalubrité inimaginables. Je vais vous donner un exemple pour que vous ayez une idée de ce que c'est cette insalubrité. C'est à Moria, il y a une extension très importante en dehors du camp, proprement dit, l'extension vers les Oliveraies, parce qu'il y a 20 000 personnes pour pas plus que 2700 places. Donc, dans cette extension, en dehors du camp, mettons dans la jungle de Moria, il y a des quartiers où il n'y a qu'un seul robinet d'eau pour 1300 personnes. Je dis bien 1300 personnes. Tandis qu'à Vathi, c'est le hotspot à Samos, à l'île de Samos, Vathi, c'est un camp qui fonctionne 10 fois au-dessus de sa capacité d'accueil, 10 fois au-dessus. Dans la jungle, dite jungle de Vathi, il y a des abris de fortune qui ont été construits au-dessus du niveau de la citerne d'eau. Ça veut dire tout simplement que les gens qui sont logés dans ces abris de fortune ont aucun accès, mais aucun accès à l'eau courante. Donc, comme vous pouvez comprendre que dans de telles conditions, respecter d'une façon la plus rudimentaire les règles d'hygiène le plus simple, comme se laver les mains, s'avère absolument et tout simplement impossible. Quant aux règles de la distanciation sociale, elle est impossible à pratiquer du fait d'un surpeuplement inimaginable, mais elle s'avère d'autant plus impossible à pratiquer du fait qu'une partie du personnel administratif a déserté le camp, tandis que les entrées des ONG, des membres des ONG, se font en compte-gouttes dans les camps. Ça s'est traduit par quoi? Ça s'est traduit par des scènes de bousculades inimaginables pendant la distribution de la nourriture, où on voit dans des vidéos des réfugiés se battre corps à corps pour une portion de nourriture. Et il faut savoir aussi que les réfugiés sont à la limite de la survie. C'est pour ça qu'ils se battent pour une portion de nourriture à Moria Lesbos, parce que le gouvernement Mitsotakis, par le biais de son ministre de la politique migratoire, a cru bon, il y a à peu près un mois et demi, de supprimer tout simplement les allocations, les très maigres allocations dont bénéficiaient pendant 6 mois les réfugiés reconnus comme tels. Donc, vous avez, ça donne des situations avec des scènes de bousculades inimaginables pour une portion de nourriture, où parler de distanciation sociale revient à une mauvaise blague, vraiment. Hein. Et ça donne aussi des situations explosives au sein de ces camps, surtout à Samos, à Chios et à Lesbos, où vous avez des incidents violents, vous avez des confrontations entre groupes ethniques. Il y a plusieurs départs d'incendies qui ont été signalés à Moria, à Chios et à Samos. Le plus récent de ces incidents a été une nuit très violente à Avathi, à Samos, à Moria, à Samos, excusez-moi, pas à Moria, à Avathi, et où, après des confrontations entre réfugiés et après plusieurs départs de feu, la police, tandis que le feu était en train de se propager dans les camps, n'a pas trouvé mieux que d'empêcher les réfugiés d'évacuer le camp, sous prétexte que leur confinement dans les camps, un camp en feu, hein, et continuer du fait qu'il fallait respecter les règles de confinement dans les camps pendant la pandémie. Donc, il est temps aussi de rappeler quelle est l'origine de cette situation de surpeuplement inimaginable dans les hotspots sur les îles grecques. C'est l'accord qui n'est pas un véritable accord avec un statut juridique, d'accord, mais c'est la déclaration commune entre l'Union européenne et la Turquie qui date de mars 2016 et qui comportait, entre autres, l'obligation de la Grèce d'imposer le confinement géographique des nouveaux arrivants dans les îles grecques. C'est bien cela qui a abouti à la situation actuelle où vous avez 39 000 personnes, des demandeurs d'asile et des réfugiés, pour à peu près 6 000 places, avec aussi le fait que le gouvernement actuel, ce qui a aggravé encore plus la situation, c'est le fait que le gouvernement actuel, le gouvernement Mitsotakis, a gelé pendant un temps assez long les déconfinements des plus vulnérables. C'était la politique des Syriza, c'était d'extraire de cette règle du confinement la population la plus vulnérable, et ça, et de leur donner la possibilité d'être transférés vers la Grèce continentale. Or, les transferts vers la Grèce continentale ont été gelés pendant plusieurs mois par le gouvernement actuel, et maintenant, ça reprend, mais ça reprend vraiment complètement au compte-gouttes, et un transfert qui était prévu pour dimanche dernier, un transfert de 1500 personnes les plus vulnérables du camp de Moria a été tout simplement annulé Et soi-disant, mais on ne sait pas si ça va se réaliser, il va y avoir dimanche prochain un transfert de 400 personnes, juste de 400 personnes du camp de Moria vers la Grèce continentale. En même temps, il y a au niveau des discours une instrumentalisation systématique de la peur complètement justifiée du coronavirus par la population. Et cette instrumentalisation vise à stigmatiser les réfugiés et les migrants et à les présenter comme porteurs des maladies, comme des véritables pestiférés qui viendraient contaminer la soi-disant pureté de la nation. Au point que même le secrétaire d'État à l'immigration avait reproduit sur son compte Twitter un fake news, un véritable fake news, selon lequel la Turquie serait en train de programmer, de mettre en route un transfert massif des réfugiés contaminés par coronavirus vers les îles grecques. Bien entendu, c'était une fake news et finalement, le ministre de la politique migratoire, M. Mitsotakis, a été obligé de démentir, mais entre-temps, le mal a été fait, c'est-à-dire cette fake news a été présentée comme une information sur plusieurs journaux télévisés et ce n'est pas un hasard. C'est la préparation du terrain pour la légitimation des opérations de refoulement massif et systématique. Car il faut dire qu'il se passe actuellement au niveau de la mer Égée des refoulements violents, extrêmement dangereux pour les migrants qui se trouvent dans des embarcations de fortune, la plupart des fois des canots pneumatiques, des canots gonflables. Et nous avons eu plusieurs cas de dénonciation des refoulements qui se font au niveau maritime, avec tous les risques que ça peut comporter, comme pour un naufrage, pour des noyades, etc. Nous avons eu entre le 1er et le 3 mars plusieurs cas qui ont été dénoncés par l'Alarmophone, l'ONG Alarmophone, où vous avez eu des cas de refoulement où le garde-côte grec enlevait le moteur de l'embarcation et enlevait aussi les bidons d'essence et repoussait les bateaux qui arrivaient vers la côte grecque, vers les autres territoriaux turcs. Et vous avez eu d'autres cas aussi qui ont été dénoncés, 9 cas au moins depuis le 23 mars, qui ont été dénoncés par le Aegean Boat Report, des refoulements avec des life rafts. Les life rafts, ce sont des canots de survie qui se présentent sous la forme de tentes gonflables et où on plaçait les réfugiés et même des réfugiés qui étaient arrivés à terre sur les côtes grecques. Et donc, on les plaçait, on les repoussait vers les eaux territoriaux turcs. Et bien entendu, il y a eu aussi, pendant les mois de mars, surtout fin février et début mars, des refoulements à Evros, des refoulements systématiques à Evros. Et Amnesty International a dénoncé au moins 2 morts par tir de balles réelles à la frontière d'Evros et une femme disparue lors de ces opérations de refoulement, de pushback, bien entendu, complètement illégitimes. Et on a aussi la dénonciation par l'équipement d'un bateau de Frontex, l'équipement danois d'un bateau de Frontex, qui, début mars, a refusé d'obéir aux ordres reçus par les gardes-côtes grecs qui lui demandaient de remettre à l'eau les réfugiés qu'il venait de sauver et de récupérer, de les remettre à l'eau et de les repousser vers la Turquie, et ils ont refusé de le faire. Donc, mais dans la plupart des cas, il faut dire que Frontex, les bateaux de Frontex ou les forces de Frontex à Evros participent au pushback. Donc, j'en viens à la situation de l'asile. Comme vous le savez peut-être, la procédure d'asile a été suspendue par le gouvernement entre le 1er et le 30 mars. C'était une suspension complètement illégale qui viole frontalement la Convention de Genève de 1951, où il n'est prévu aucune clause de suspension dans des circonstances exceptionnelles. Même en cas de guerre, il n'y a pas la possibilité de suspendre la procédure de l'asile. Elle a été réouverte tout récemment sous les pressions du Haut Commissariat aux réfugiés et sous des pressions des organismes internationaux et aussi sous la pression de la commissaire Ylva Johansson. Mais la réouverture de la procédure d'asile s'est fait avec un service d'asile fermé au public jusqu'au 15 mai pour des raisons de pandémie et en même temps avec un service qui est en grève depuis 7 jours pour licenciement abusif de 17 vacataires syndiqués. Et il faut savoir que les délais aussi qui sont donnés aux migrants et aux réfugiés pour déposer une demande d'asile, mais aussi pour déposer un recours, sont des... Excusez-moi, est-ce que vous pouvez faire mute sur votre micro?
Can everyone keep their microphones on mute?
Merci. Voilà.
Vicky, vous pouvez continuer, mais bientôt finir avec deux ou trois...
Oui, vous inquiétez pas. Oui. Donc, les délais sont très courts déjà et ils sont en plus, ils sont encore plus raccourcis par un nouveau projet de loi qui impose des délais si courts pour les recours, c'est-à-dire pour les demandes en deuxième instance, d'examen en deuxième instance, après un rejet de la demande d'asile en première instance, les délais sont si courts que ça devient pratiquement, ça revient à supprimer les droits au recours. Je voudrais juste, avant d'arriver aux propositions, je voudrais juste vous dire quelques mots quand même concernant les centres, les CRA, les centres de rétention administrative, les centres fermés, où sont détenus au moins. S'il vous plaît, votre micro sur mute. S'il vous plaît. Oui, voilà. Il y a 6 000 personnes, et même plus que ça, qui sont actuellement en détention administrative et dans des conditions encore pires que dans les hotspots dans les îles. Et en vue, ils sont détenus en vue d'une expulsion absolument impossible vu les conditions actuelles ou en vue d'un renvoi vers la Turquie, toujours impossible vu le fait qu'il y a une fermeture complète des frontières et même il y a des cas où les détenus administratifs sont retenus dans des commissariats, des cellules de commissariat, où ils peuvent se trouver entassés à 20 ou à 30 par cellule, où ils doivent dormir par terre à tour de rôle. C'est pour vous donner une idée de l'insalubrité maximale de cette situation. Et il y a eu un appel par les conseils grecs pour les réfugiés, des Greek Council for Refugees, avec 6 autres ONG qui ont appelé à la libération immédiate des détenus administratifs, car leur vie est vraiment en danger, et pas seulement leur vie et la santé en danger, mais aussi la vie et la santé du personnel de détention et de leur famille. Donc, ça vient aux solutions possibles. Nous sommes face à une situation, à une politique que moi, j'oserais appeler une politique de dissuasion par une mise en danger délibérée de la vie d'autrui. Donc, face à cette situation, il y a des solutions et il y a des solutions qui pourraient être immédiatement réalisables si jamais il y avait la volonté politique. Les réfugiés pourraient, par exemple, être logés dans les grands parcs touristiques dont dispose la Grèce. Ils pouvaient être logés en chambre d'hôtel, en chambre et appartements loués, à tous ces logements touristiques dont dispose la Grèce et qui sont actuellement vides et qui ne pourraient se remettre à fonctionner dans les meilleurs des cas avant la mi-juin ou on dirait début juillet. Et en plus, leur transfert, un transfert sécurisé vers la Grèce continentale, pourrait être assuré par des paquebots de croisière qui sont actuellement hors emploi. Et dans un deuxième temps, après un logement sécurisé des réfugiés dans les parcs touristiques grecs, il pourrait y avoir une répartition, enfin une répartition entre les pays européens, une répartition équitable et proportionnée à la population de chaque pays, à son PIB, au nombre de réfugiés qui s'y retrouvent, etc. Or, tant du côté grec que du côté européen, la volonté politique de la mise en œuvre d'une politique de la mise en œuvre d'une politique déconfinement, des sorties de ces enfermements criminels pour entrer dans un confinement sécurisé et protecteur et dans des conditions dignes des réfugiés, cette volonté politique manque cruellement. Car les financements aussi, il existe pour une telle proposition. Il y a 700 millions, excusez-moi. Il y a 700 millions d'euros qui ont été octroyés à la Grèce comme aide exceptionnelle pour assurer l'étanchéité, soi-disant, des frontières de l'Union européenne pendant la période de l'afflux massif des réfugiés à la frontière gréco-turque à Evros. Donc, il faudrait réorienter cette somme-là pour les logements et l'hébergement sécurisé des réfugiés. C'est vraiment une priorité majeure et je pense que la pandémie de COVID-19 nous a fait comprendre à nous tous et toutes que nous vivons tous et toutes dans le même monde et ce qui affecte les uns affecte aussi les autres. Et il est temps que nous prenions nos responsabilités. Merci.
Ok, merci, merci beaucoup, merci énormément Vicky pour cette présentation avec les chiffres et les dernières évolutions, mais aussi une présentation vraiment du cœur. Donc merci beaucoup pour ça. Yes, you spoke as well on the difficulty of practicing social distancing in times of COVID-19. In refugee camps that are 10 times the capacity that they should be. So I think that's a very important point to take from there as well. And that brings us now to the next speaker in this panel, who is Karen Metz. She's a senior advocacy advisor for Save the Children. So she's leading all the migration-related advocacy work of Save the Children towards the European Union. Save the Children has programs all over Europe, mainly focused at children, but also in the Balkans and Northern Africa, there are projects of Save the Children. And so, Karen, we asked you to speak to us today about the impact of COVID, specifically on children in Europe at the external borders. So Greece, Italy, but also if there is time left to also tell us something of what's going on at the Balkans. And then as well, we ask you to have a special focus on the relocation scheme, because I think a lot of people here are interested in that as well, the relocation of non-accompanied minors from Greece, where discussions are now going on all over Europe, in the European Union, but also inside member states. There are discussions on the participation in this relocation scheme. So it would be very interesting to hear your updates on that, Karen. You have the floor.
Thank you, Flor. And thank you also for the other presenters. I was really impassioned by Vicky's intervention just now. So I will be speaking about Greece and about the Balkans mainly, and about the relocation system. So I'll first start by giving you a bit of an overview of the children that are in Greece, the unaccompanied children that are in Greece as well, and their profiles, to give everybody also a bit of a reality check. So there's about 5,200 unaccompanied children in Greece, which means both the islands and the mainland. 44% of them are Afghan, 22% of them come from Pakistan, and 11% are Syrian. 93% are boys, 7% are girls, and 8.7% are below the age of 14. A lot of us are familiar with the number on the islands, which are about 1,600. So when we're talking about unaccompanied children, we're mainly talking about teenagers, but there are also a lot of younger children on the islands. If you look at the numbers, there's about 38,000 people on the islands. 1 in 3 of them are children. And out of those, 6 out of 10 are below the age of 10. And this is also something you realize when you enter the camps, when you go to Moria. The first thing you think is, oh my God, so many children here, so many young children running around in what Vicky also referred to as a situation of hell. The information that I will be sharing is a bit based on our cooperation with Better Days, which is a local NGO working with unaccompanied children in and around Moria. They're constantly on the field day and night working with the children, and we're supporting them by doing some advocacy outreach. So we'll be focusing on Moria now, but just wanted to highlight that the situation on other islands is just as dire or even worse, because there's even less organizations and volunteers present, and now even less than before because of the COVID-19 situation. A lot of people have left the islands. And for instance, on Samos, there's 290 unaccompanied children, of which only 80 are living in the safe space, the so-called safe space in the hotspot, whereas the others are just having to fend for themselves in an area that is referred to as the jungle. Now, in and around Moria, there's about 800 unaccompanied children. Half of them are also located inside the so-called safe zone in the hotspot, and the other half are in the olive groves in the surrounding hotspots. So if you, I mean, some of you on the call will have been there, but it's something that just sticks with you. But if you arrive in the hotspots in Moria, you'll see this one area which is with concrete walls around it, barbed wire, which is very difficult to enter and leave, and where there's a lot of people crammed in one space. And then you have the surrounding olive grove, which is a hill with olive trees, and there's like all these makeshift shelters, etc., and tents. And there's no, like Vicky said, there's no access to electricity, just one water tap per 1,300 people. And those 400 teenagers are just trying to survive there, trying to beg people if they can sleep in their tents. They've reported also to Better Days incidents of stabbing, beatings, forceful intoxication. There's a huge increase of sexual violence, and in addition to that, you also have to realize that there are around the area of Moria, outside of Moria, there's some day centers, some recreational centers, which often provide a little bit of relief, a little bit of escape to the children and the families there. But these are also closed now, so there's really no escaping from hell. And it's just breaking people. And I was speaking at a webinar yesterday as well, so some people will recognize I'm repeating some of the things I said yesterday, but it really breaks people. And I hear stories about optimistic unaccompanied children arriving and then being really engaged and committed, and then gradually starting to break down, getting psychosis, getting all kinds of psychological trauma, and then ending up in the psychiatric wards and committing to self-harm and suicide because the situation is so terrible. And my colleague also said on the phone yesterday, it's hard to describe, but there is just no safety nowhere. Nowhere is safe. There's no real oversight there, and food distributions have been reduced from 3 times a day to 2 times a day. So now people have to queue even longer, where social distancing is impossible. there's a limitation to the freedom of movement. So one person per family can leave the camp, but you also have to stand in line to get a permit to leave the camp, which is again causing long queuing. And in these queues, there's a lot of aggression, and children, unaccompanied children, are afraid to stand in line there. So this limits also their access to food, their access to certain permits, etc. So these restrictions have made what is already kind of stretching human resilience to the furthest possible even more difficult. So based on what we saw on the ground, we worked together with Better Days because we saw this relocation process was really gaining speed, which in itself is a positive thing. So we tried to develop a few criteria for relocation because it was unclear. At the time, there were discussions with the German government, and my German colleagues were very involved in this, but the German government seemed to be focusing mainly on girls below the age of 14. And as you've seen in the beginning of my presentation, there aren't that many. So we wanted to build these criteria from what we saw on the ground. And the first criterion we proposed was length of stay. So there's about 288 unaccompanied children that arrived between August and October of last year. And the longer you are in Moria, the more vulnerable you become. So that was the first one. And then the second one was also partly inspired by MSF and the work MSF and other health organizations are doing there, was health. And this applies to both unaccompanied children and children with families. To give also a few numbers, an organization called HealthPoint assessed 465 unaccompanied children, and 74 had acute dermatological conditions such as scabies, and other skin diseases, which are also the result of the lack of water and hygiene conditions there. MSF also assessed 330 children and with complex and or chronic medical conditions. Of these 330, the majority, the 42% was female and 63% was below the age of 10. So there are very young, very sick children also in the camp. And we believe that these should also be transferred as a matter of urgency. And then the third one we looked at, and this should not be considered relocation because it's a different procedure, which is accelerated family reunification under the Dublin regulation. So this is separate from relocation, but it's also an important step to do because there's a lot of pending family reunification cases for children on the islands with countries like Germany, Sweden, France, the UK, Norway, Finland, and also Belgium, which could be accelerated. And this could also provide some relief. Relocation has always been a bit of a challenging procedure. If we look at the previous relocation scheme, out of the nearly 35,000 people that were relocated, around 800 were unaccompanied children. So that's a very, very, very small proportion. In the current scheme, because I don't know if everybody has all the numbers, the countries involved are France with about 300 to 400 pledges. I don't know the exact number. I don't have the official confirmation. Germany with 350 places, Finland with 175 places, Ireland with 36 places. Portugal said that they would be the next one to relocate after Germany and Luxembourg relocated last week with 50 places in May. And what I'm hearing is that they committed 200 places. Lithuania said they would relocate 2. Luxembourg has relocated 12. Bulgaria apparently, but also this is just from the media, confirmed for 50 cases. Slovenia this week got involved as a new participant with 4 places. And Switzerland apparently also committed to 20 places. And in principle, Croatia and Belgium are also involved, but as we know, we don't really know if they pledged and how many they pledged. This is obviously not all unaccompanied children. Some of them are families and single parent households. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago, I can't remember exactly, the first relocation took place from Luxembourg and Germany. And it's great that these countries are willing to make the effort and set the precedent because it's a very difficult time politically as well with COVID-19. But the situation on the islands is critical. So while we're really appreciative of this effort, there are some things, some recommendations we want to put forward, which could be helpful also for relocation in other countries. The first one is that there needs to be a clear agreement on the eligibility criteria of the children involved. So it needs to be clear which children are being selected. It needs to be clearly agreed between the two countries, because what happens is that Greece has certain interests, and then the relocating country has a certain wish list of children they would like to see relocated. But this doesn't always match with the situation on the ground. So what we really recommend is to start building these criteria from the vulnerabilities we observe on the ground. Because of course, generally, globally, girls are more vulnerable, but on the Greek islands, we see that teenage boys are more vulnerable. And that's a harder political sell, but it is a reality on the ground. And this brings me also to the second recommendation, which is involving local NGOs and the local unaccompanied minors office in the process. Because they're working with these children. They know where they are. They're in daily contact with them. They can also reach out to the more vulnerable children that are living in the olive groves or in urban settlements. So that's really important. And then another recommendation is, and there's been in this last relocation effort, there was a lot of pressure coming also from civil society, from the member states involved, to relocate really quickly. But I think we need to find the right balance between relocating the children quickly and making use of the existing momentum, but also protecting the children. And therefore, there needs to be enough time to consult with the children, to talk to them, to ask them if they want to be relocated, because not all of them want to be relocated. And to also explain them why they've been selected, why others haven't been selected, because what otherwise you end up with is also the children that are left behind, which are already fragile, that become even more traumatized because they don't understand why some person was relocated and the other wasn't relocated. You also have an increased risk of family separation. Therefore, it's really important to take the time to explain the procedure, make them understand what relocation means. The next recommendation is about the best interest of the child. I'm not going to go into detail about this because maybe UNHCR will talk about it as well. And this is also a bit of a child rights nerdy thing. So we think the DUBS scheme is a good best practice. This was an agreement between the UK and Greece to relocate unaccompanied children. And they had a really great best practice with a panel that would assess the best interest of the child. But there will be a report by the Fundamental Rights Agency launched later this month, in May, next month, where you can find all of this information. And then the last one, which I stole yesterday from the webinar from IOM, is to monitor the situation after relocation. So to see how the child evolves after it's been relocated, to see if once this tense situation, once it's removed out of this tense situation, what changes. This can also help us build a positive narrative about, how great it is to engage in relocation, and maybe encourage the countries involved to continue relocating children. This is it. These are the recommendations for the relocation scheme. And some people have asked me about a fair share, like what would be a fair share for relocation? And it's very hard to determine. It depends on the political climate. It depends on the capacity you have to receive those children. I saw in Belgium, if I recall correctly, that Minor Ndako said that there might be some capacity. So I think there's a number of things you need to keep into consideration, but it's really hard to make these kind of estimates. Then I'm going to quickly jump to the situation in the Balkans, because there's very little reporting about what goes on in the Balkans. We are working there. We are in Serbia and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the camps are currently on lockdown, so they're completely closed. And in Serbia, the camps are being guarded by the army. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there's a police interference. And there's been a lot of incidents with refugees and migrants and the police, also incidents involving children. There's a lot of targeting of refugees and migrants. There's a very kind of climate of hate speech also in the media. you know, linking refugees and migrants to COVID-19. The situation there, and the situation on the islands as well, but the situation in especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina also is getting very tense because people are locked up in bunkers. There's almost no possibility to go outside. This is a mobile population that generally wants to move on. And there's also Ramadan and different eating schedules, and which poses problems with access to food. So it's a very challenging situation. We see that some people still manage to move on. People have been detected in Croatia and Slovenia. We wonder, you know, are they being isolated? Do they have access to healthcare? What about the children? Are their vulnerabilities being assessed? We also continue to see pushbacks, which is even a bigger risk in the case of COVID-19, in the situation of COVID-19. And of course, in the camps, there are inadequate isolation facilities. Some use the approach, we can't enter the camps in Serbia, so we don't really know what's happening there. But what we see is, if a case is detected, that the whole camp is being quarantined, which cannot be the ultimate goal. And then in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there are some spaces for isolation, but not nearly enough care for the people involved. Okay, now I'm coming to the end of the presentation. Overall, what we see for children, the needs for children we see across Europe, in Greece and in the Balkans, is that there needs to be access to alternative accommodation. And something that Vicky mentioned also in our presentation is that there are hotels and unused housing space where people could be transferred to, so that social distancing can be possible for them. For children, you know, there are also closed-in reception centers, crowded reception centers all over Europe, which poses risk. We see this also, there's a lot of increase of domestic violence, but in the camps, there's also huge risks of violence and abuse. And usually our staff is in these camps monitoring the situation, but now we cannot enter these camps. So there's very little oversight again. So what we would like to see is that children also have access to a contact list or alert numbers that can then intervene in case there are incidents in these reception centers. Between migrant and refugee communities, there's a lot of rumors about COVID-19. So clear information is still very important. Then we also feel that more active outreach to undocumented families with children would be really helpful. They're extremely vulnerable because they're very isolated. A lot of them even don't have access to food, and they're afraid to access healthcare because they think they might be deported. And then another thing that's specifically applied to children is access to residency permits. There's a lot of children that are turning 18 and then all of a sudden become irregular and have no access to services. And this is just one final thing I wanted to highlight. Thank you very much. That's it from my end.
Thank you so much, Karen, for these very concrete also policy recommendations, and also for sharing your insights on what's happening in the Balkan. I think this is something that we do not talk that much about, but where the situation also is very, very hard. And then I think some very interesting points also made on the relocation scheme, not only on the needs in Greece, but also the need for criteria and the practical difficulties sometimes occurring in the process itself. So there we can see that there is a lot of work being done now all over Europe. In a lot of cities are now also standing up to raise these issues. In Belgium, for example, the city of Ghent last week expressed its engagement, and so a lot of movement is being created around this. So I think this is a very good thing, and we will see definitely see a lot more of that in the coming weeks. And so we can maybe talk about this, what's happening in Belgium later as well. But that brings me to the last speaker for today here, which is Alexandra Embiricos from UNHCR. So Alexandra is a policy associate at the Policy and Legal Support Unit of UNHCR, the UNHCR representation at the European Union and the Benelux and Ireland, if I have that right. And so she's responsible for the legal support, and she's also the liaison officer of UNHCR to the Council of the European Union. So Alexandra, we ask you to talk about COVID's impact on refugees in Europe, and also on the guidelines of UNHCR in how governments should deal with this. And then if you have some time left to add also on what Karen has already explained us about the relocation scheme, that would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Floor. And first of all, I'd like to thank the other panelists, Karen, Sara, and Vicky, for your really inspired discussions. I listened to it with great interest. And I'd just like to reiterate what many have already said, that this is an unprecedented pandemic. And along with it, there are some challenges that are potentially exacerbating already very difficult situations. And to that end, one of the most important things is ensuring access to assistance for all people. So this includes health facilities, social and economic services. The potential of this virus is really to exacerbate the inequalities that we already see in our social and economic situations, and any response must include the world's most vulnerable people. Of course, this relates to persons forced to flee, and they should not be denied safety and protection on the pretext or even as a side effect of responding to this virus. And recently, the High Commissioner said in a statement just last week, exactly to this effect. I'd like to start by going on a more global dimension and then zooming in towards the EU dimension and then referencing the practical recommendations that you mentioned, Floor. So UNHCR estimates that about 167 countries globally so far have fully or partially closed their borders to contain the spread of the virus. And worryingly, at least 57 states make no exemption for persons seeking asylum. Now, UNHCR has been calling on states to manage border restrictions in a way that also respect international human rights and refugee protection standards and the right to health. I think it's fairly obvious that we can only tackle this virus when each and every one of us is protected. One of the points that UNHCR has been advocating also to the EU is to provide more financial assistance globally. So while this virus has brought many of the aspects of our lives to a standstill, unfortunately, wars and crises have not stopped, and the EU is the largest donor globally and should continue to provide this life-saving and flexible financial assistance. UNHCR has also provided a few key legal considerations documents that have been particularly helpful. So one more on access to territory for persons in need of international protection on a global scale, and one more focused on the European Commission's guidelines for border management. A couple of key messages here that I will also reiterate as we go through, but although, of course, states are entitled to take measures to manage the risk to public health, such measures can't prevent non-nationals from seeking protection. And what measures are put in place need to be non-discriminatory, proportionate, subject to regular review and time-bound in the cases of quarantine. The normal practice now is about 14 days. I think it goes without saying that imposing blanket and indefinite measures on non-admission of asylum seekers could violate the principle of non-refoulement. Going to the EU dimension, I did already reference that the European Commission has provided guidance at the end of March on the EU's temporary restriction of non-essential travel to the EU. This, I believe, is continuing until May 15th. And good to see that the guidance provides that there is an exemption for persons seeking international protection, and that in addition, coordinated and reinforced health checks should be carried out. So really reiterating that access must be a principle and a norm that is ensured. The EU's response should of course include the most vulnerable, and of course its member states should ensure that everyone has access to health facilities. This is one of the issues highlighted in the practical recommendations document, so this is also accessible online. It's a good recommendations, good practices to address some of the protection concerns in light of the current pandemic, and it aims to provide concrete advice to states to enable an effective response to the pandemic. Many member states across the EU have implemented a range of very different measures. Some of these relate to borders, changes within or even closures in some cases of reception centres, changes to asylum registration practices, and as I said, these very much vary But some of the recommendations also drawn from operations across the field are included. So one of these elements would be access to asylum should be preserved. And the majority of EU countries have adapted their asylum systems quite successfully to the current situation. We recommend that the continuation of asylum procedures is conducted with some additional flexibility. So for example, in some cases, in cases of illness, a no-show to interviews, which might be penalized or seen as a non-cooperation, flexibility should be extended to ensure that there is as much leeway possible in this exceptional circumstance so that asylum procedures can continue to function in the best ways possible. The second point, perhaps of interest, is now that we have adapted some of these asylum procedures, Member States should also look towards backlog management. So there has been some disruption, there has been some delay in certain cases, and proper documentation and different measures to ensure the backlog management is properly foreseen is going to be a crucial next step. Maintaining basic registration and documentation is part of this, and I will go into a few quick member state good practices afterwards, but for example, the use of protective equipment, in some cases plexiglass, so different member states have been adapting to recommendations from the World Health Organization of how to properly implement social distancing and so forth in this current situation. In the context of reception centers and also in detention, it was already mentioned by Vicky as well, the incredibly difficult situation in many of the reception areas, and I will talk about Greece hopefully at the end. But as I also think Karen mentioned, one of the recommendations we also included is a shift to independent accommodation. So special attention should be paid to the inability to social distance in some of these more confined spaces, and also special attention to homeless populations and to anyone in informal settlements. So in this case, the use of temporary housing could be an option, such as hostels and so forth, and not to mention the continuing importance of maintaining the psychosocial well-being of individuals in these very strenuous and stressful situations. So any opportunities to continue efforts either remotely or in person with social distancing is also encouraged. So there have also been some promising measures in relation to the management of the virus in different areas. So some member states have implemented, for example, online interviews and remote registration modalities. Information provision has been something that has been improving and innovating in quite a few different ways. I recall reading that both Italy and France had introduced multilingual information portals to allow the most up-to-date information to be transmitted to persons of concern. We know that people who have enough information to make the best decisions for themselves is one of the best ways of preventing a virus like this from spreading. Austria, for example, has also included an innovative new app to try and get real-time updates and news from the authorities to persons of concern. And one specific issue that I noted was Portugal. Until 1st of July, I believe, all foreigners with pending asylum applications will be treated as permanent residents in order to continue to ensure access to services. I think it's without saying also that refugees can be part of the solution themselves. Forcibly displaced people, and of course those who are stateless as well, so those which don't have a nationality, they have skills and resources themselves to assist with the response, and member states can support and help with this endeavor by recognizing qualifications early and providing access to on-the-job training and so on, even in such a situation. If I have a bit of time now, I'd go into a few elements of relocation from Greece. Karen, you mentioned maybe talking about the best interest assessment. I will try and go into a few elements of that. First and foremost, I think in such a situation, solidarity between EU member states is one of the most paramount elements that was referenced in regards to relocation, and certainly UNHCR are urging authorities to scale up transfers from the crowded island reception centres. Some of the stats were already mentioned, and of course it was very, very vividly described the abysmal situations on the islands. So 35,000 asylum seekers are staying in facilities for fewer than 6,000. Many informal settlements have sprung up in the neighboring olive groves. And in amongst those, there are 5,200 unaccompanied refugee children in Greece, about 1,600 on the islands. And it's without mentioning that the majority live, as Karen said, in precarious conditions. They risk exploitation, violence, human trafficking. And to that end, UNHCR continues to advocate for a solidarity mechanism that can quickly relieve and unburden the pressure from these island camps. It goes without saying that future member states should be encouraged to step forward and commit to the reception of unaccompanied children and other very vulnerable profiles from Greece. So it was mentioned medical cases or children with medical cases and their families. This is a concrete and tangible measure of solidarity and responsibility sharing across Europe. We definitely welcome a lot of the recent moves by member states. Germany and Luxembourg were already mentioned, to relocate a number of children in line with particularly their best interests and family ties as well. And while the number might be small to start, it can indeed only be a start. When it comes to relieving these completely overcrowded camps, it is an important first step, and we welcome the announcements and hope that soon more member states will also step up and relocate some children. There was a video conference of Home Affairs ministers only a couple of days ago where this was reiterated, and Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson, also stated that she encourages member states to step forward and continue with this procedure. As mentioned, perhaps UNHCR is actively supporting in these plans to relocate 1,600 children. It's making use of some of the experience gained operationally and on the ground from our colleagues in Greece during the operational involvement in the 2015 and 2016 relocation scheme exercise, for example, but also the DUBS program, so relocating unaccompanied children from Greece to the UK. So this operational involvement came on request of EASO, and of course with discussions with member states involved. And we were asked to conduct the best interest determinations and contribute to the selection of children. And I understood from colleagues in Greece that this is a marked shift and a greater operational involvement than in the past. But at the same time, I'd like to highlight that there is still a need to strengthen support for the children who will still remain in Greece, and for the establishment in general of a more predictable arrangement for relocation, moving away from some of the more ad hoc measures that we've seen. And here the introduction, or the soon to be forthcoming new pact on migration and asylum, could provide an excellent opportunity to solidifying a solidarity mechanism that works to ensure the protection of peoples in Europe. I'd here mention that UNHCR has come out with a few recommendations, not only to the presidencies of the Council of the EU, but also to the Commission in advance of the new pact. And I'll maybe reiterate a couple of those policy recommendations at the end. And finally, I'm not sure how much time I have left, but some other measures that UNHCR are taking to scale up support in Greece as well, to minimize the risk of the novel coronavirus spreading in these reception centers would be, for example, increasing water and sanitation capacity. The idea that there is one tap, as Vicky mentioned, for hundreds of people is definitely not conducive to any kind of sanitary situation, and delivering hygiene items is of utmost importance, even in the short term, and to establish medical units, spaces for screening, for isolation, for potential quarantine. So colleagues are working on that. And on a longer term, of course, UNHCR has also been repeatedly asking to decongest the islands and move individuals from the islands to the mainland. There was one further thing I wanted to mention, just on the basis of Karen's very useful policy recommendations. There was also a UNHCR, IOM, UNICEF joint paper. So it was a minimum protection standards for the identification of unaccompanied children for relocation. And it reiterated, it struck me as you were talking, it really reiterated some of the policy recommendations that you also have. So best interest of the child should be the guiding principle. Prioritization of relocation based on established vulnerability criteria and an individualized approach. Children should be consulted on the decision and involved in the decision making where it's in their best interest. And family reunification under the Dublin III regulation should be supported accordingly. I think I'll finish here to leave room for a bit of time for questions. But to conclude, the outbreak of the virus is a global challenge, and it requires a global and inclusive response that protects every individual's right to life and health. And a few policy recommendations would be to continue to ensure access to assistance for all and to preserve access to asylum, sharing and not shifting responsibility, so a distribution mechanism, a more longer term distribution mechanism perhaps built within the asylum reform, and ensure that solutions and solidarity are included in a relocation mechanism of unaccompanied children. And I think I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you so much for these very concrete guidelines, but also sharing some good practices that some countries are implementing. I think this is very interesting, and I also, of course, I very much agree with you on what you said on the Corona crisis, that we can only tackle this crisis if everyone is protected, and that if we leave no one behind, so that accounts also for refugees and migrants, regardless of their status. I think this is a global crisis, and everyone has to be taken into account there. So thank you, and thank you again to all the other speakers for this very interesting information. Sometimes I think a very grim picture of what's going on. And the crisis that's going on at the external borders of the European Union, but even more important, maybe what you also did is putting attention to the urgency to act, and also to give us an idea about first steps, some small steps on the way out of this crisis, with some very concrete policy recommendations. So this is very useful, I think, for most of us, and also for me and for my organization. We will definitely be able to use this in our advocacy, also in Belgium. And I think their first step is to get Belgium on board in this relocation scheme. So we're going to do a lot of work on that. And so now we have, I think, about 20 minutes time for questions. And maybe because I was speaking on this the Belgian engagement in the relocation scheme, there is a vote next week in Belgian Parliament that asks on government to act upon this and to get engaged and to start relocating. And I saw that the first question here was asked by someone who co-wrote this piece of legislation, this resolution, which is Peter Geers from the Green Party. So I don't know, Peter, if you want to say something about this resolution to all of us. Then you can put your mic on if you're interested in that, and you can maybe also ask your first question that you said here in the chat box.
Right. Hi, I'm not really used to talking to so many people at once, but here goes. So I work for the Green Party. I'm not a member of parliament, but I do work in Belgium's federal parliament. And we have drafted a resolution together with the French-speaking Ecolo Party that calls on our government to take part in the relocation scheme that we have been discussing before. So we'll see what happens next week, but we are quite hopeful that that at least we will have a parliamentary debate on this question, which so far we have not had. Second of all, we have managed to have the parliament agree on the urgency of this resolution. This requires a separate vote. So we already had a majority in parliament agreeing that this resolution should be discussed in an urgent matter, which is the only reason why we will already have this discussion next week. Otherwise, it would have taken a few months. So this is a positive step. A majority of Parliament has agreed to the urgency of this proposal. So we'll see. Hopefully, this also results in a majority that agrees with the substance of the resolution. We'll have to see. All the elements that the panelists have provided us and me in particular will, of course, be very useful for the debate. The specific situation in Moria on the Greek islands will be very helpful. On another note, my question was on the Malta mechanism and was addressed to Sara. We are quite interested in this as well, because last year we drafted another resolution calling for Belgium to participate in the Malta mechanism. And this resolution actually passed in our parliament, so there was a majority for it. And so formally our parliament has asked the Belgian government to take part in this Malta mechanism. However, despite this clear parliamentary majority, the government has so far refused to follow up on this, and so in our mind, the two resolutions are linked in that we hope to avoid a repetition of last year's situation, in which perhaps this resolution will now also be accepted by Parliament and then subsequently ignored by the government. We hope to avoid this. So this is why, Sara, do you have any information, specific information as to to what degree the Malta mechanism is functioning? Are there any numbers of refugees and migrants that have been rescued at sea and that have been relocated under this mechanism or not? The number of countries that are participating to the mechanism and so forth.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because it's really related to my intervention and to what is happening now in the field. So first of all, we have really few information on this Malta mechanism, but the few that we have, first of all, the Malta mechanism started in the end of September 2019, where there was an informal meetings where participated, there was only Italy, French, Germany, Malta, and Finland. The strange context for this Malta mechanism is that in this moment, in September 2019, there was more arrival in Greece and in Spain than in Italy and Malta, but it was a Malta mechanism put in place. The really common point with what happened now is the fact that, again, is really a procedure only for migrant intercept at sea by search and rescue NGO. So that means that, again, Italy in September used the excuse that there was a lot of arrival. That was not the case, actually, and now for the COVID. But again, they have two different procedures always, and in some way is a way of dissuasion for solidarity at sea with search and rescue. The few information that we have is thanks to a press release by the Italian Minister of Interior at the end of January 2020, where declared that 464 persons have been relocated from September to January, to the end of January, in this Malta mechanism. So really not so many people. And there is another important point. The 21 January 2020, the Italian Ministry of Interior declared that was 68 asylum seekers. So that is mean that in most of the case, migrants just arrive in Italy and just wait for this relocation without any status, and then when they arrive in the other country, they start their asylum procedure. And so these 61 have been relocated to Paris in French. But if you look at and this press release mentioned the date of arrival of this person, of these migrants relocated. So people that have been relocated 21 January 2020 come mainly from some arrival in June 2019, in October 2019, in November 2019. So there are like 5 persons from a disembarkment, another 5 from another one, and so on. Another one from November 2019, and at the last arrival that refer to this relocation is in November 2019. And that it's quite strange because in this Malta mechanism, they mention that the relocation must be done no longer than 4 weeks after the arrival. So we are speaking on after 9 months after the arrival, when the mechanism speak about 4 weeks after. So that is mean that for many of these migrant and asylum seekers, there is a kind of limbo for 9 months in hotspot or first reception center in Italy without not even start their asylum procedure. The other point is this Malta mechanism. It's finally have been not discussed in any council, so it's really a specific decision taken by some member states, and not a very common decision. And again, the other problematic points, it's not for all migrants arriving in Italy. That would be okay. It would be good. It will be a mechanism of solidarity. But again, for the visa relocation was only for Eritrean mainly, and now for migrants intercepted sea by search and rescue NGO. That is, this discriminatory procedure became quite problematic.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sara, for that answer. I think we had 3 more questions, so I think we should be able to have all of them answered. So I think it's more easy if I ask the rest of the questions myself. That might go a bit quicker, so that we're sure that all of them are answered. So I'll take the first one that goes out to Karen, and that's on the unaccompanied migrants on the Greek islands. And so Polat Kizitlak, if I pronounce that right, I'm sorry, asks if there are cases of minors in the Greek islands who would like to be reunited with their families, either in the EU countries or in the country of origin, and the possibility of such an operation in practical terms during lockdown and the aftermath of COVID-19. Karen.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So the answer is yes. There are definitely a lot of pending family reunification cases still there, and whether country and these family reunification cases are under Dublin, so that means that they apply to other EU member states and Switzerland and Norway. The problem is, and this is also partially answering another question in the thread, is that family reunification is quite complicated, and various member states have complex demands. For instance, they want to verify family links through DNA testing, and if you're on the islands and there's one doctor for thousands of people, you can imagine how long it takes to get a DNA test to prove that you're actually related to a person. So this is why, and then there's different Dublin units from the different member states need to work together, and this is why this is often taking a really long time. But only last week there were some confirmations for family reunification cases in Sweden and to Sweden and Finland, I think. Looking at COVID-19, I think it depends on each country whether they want to continue with family reunification. They can make that decision for themselves. Some countries are still continuing. I think some countries may have suspended, but it's good to know that the European Commission, in their guidance to all of the member states, have recommended that family reunification should be prioritized also during COVID-19. When you're talking about children wanting to be relocated, wanting to be reunited with their families in countries of origin, this is a different procedure that would then be voluntary return. And that's also quite complicated because they would have to, and a lot of these children on the islands are Afghans. So then they would have to conduct family tracing and find the family members in Afghanistan, which is an extremely difficult task. So that's also, I think that at the moment would be quite challenging. And also given that most returns of operations have been suspended right now, if not all of returns operations. Can I just also answer the other question, because it's very related to this? So why is it so difficult to engage in family reunification and relocation? So family reunification, I already explained. There are a lot of demands from different member states, which makes the procedure very hard and complex. But on relocation, I think it's also a matter of political will. A lot of member states don't want unaccompanied children because they're often complex cases. They require a lot of resources, and they might apply for family reunification. And that's what a lot of member states don't want, because we've seen some member states like Finland really filling their relocation quota very quickly of unaccompanied children under the previous relocation scheme. So it is possible, but I think member states prefer to have families because they're more easily integrated and they require less resources. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Karen, for answering both questions at the same time. There was one last question from Jeff to Alexandra. Is UNHCR still carrying out evacuation under the ETM from Libya? So ETM is the emergency transit mechanism. So that question goes to Alexandra.
Sorry, hello. Thank you for this question. While this isn't my area of particular work, I understand that currently there aren't any more flights from Libya to the ETMs in Rwanda and Niger. I think this is due to the current coronavirus situation, but more information could be publicly available, which I could get back to you on.
Okay, then I see that there was one more general question. So from Virginia, so since tensions arose in Lesbos mid-February and some NGOs were obliged to withdraw most of their staff from Lesbos, how are they practically managing their work on the island? Do you have any news on Lesbos? Anyone can answer this question?
Maybe Vicky, do you want to?
Yes, I'll try to answer to this. It's a fact that many of the members of the ONG have left the islands because there was a big pressure and a big hostility, a great hostility from the local population. And there have been many dreadful incidents, and this is the toxic effect of this common statement of the European Union and Turkey on the islands. At the first time, the islands, the local population in Lesbos and Samos, at least, at Leros also, and here the local population was very, how to say, good-willing, hospitalier. They were offering hospitality. So, during all this time, from during 5 years, their islands have been transformed into prisons, like a sort of prisons for the refugees. So this has turned completely to the other side, the local opinion, and actually there are very shameful incidents in Lesbos. So one part of this hostile opinion is a very aggressive behaving towards the members of the helpers, and the effect of this is that the people have left, and there are less people there, and their contact, their entries in the camps, as far as I know, are limited, because the the visits in the camps are forbidden. So, Flor, may I ask one question to Karen?
Yes, one last question. Okay.
Yes, to Karen and to you also. It's about the children relocation. I think that there is actually there was an open letter of 9 or 7, I don't know the number exactly, 9 or 7 cities, European cities, were proposing to the European Union to receive and to offer hospitality to children from the Greek islands, refugee children from the Greek islands. So there are the most of these cities are in states the government of these states don't accept the relocation. Is there a possibility to for these cities to actually realize the relocation without the agreement of the government of the state where they are?
I can answer this question for Belgium maybe. So in Belgium there is not, so they can. So that's a bit the idea, is that they put the pressure from the grassroots, from the local level to the Belgian government. But in any case, Belgian government has to give a laissez-passer